As we confront and grapple with some of the most pressing political, cultural, and social issues today, often we want to respond with urgency and with quickness. But urgency demands for us to slow down in order to turn towards each other, to be more reflective, and to be more thoughtful in how we engage with each other. So the exhibition Slow Motion asks the question, how do we remake our relationship to monuments? The 5 featured artists of slow motion examine and explore this question by experimenting, tinkering, and playing with different kinds of materials, non-conventional materials for monuments.
Rather than a singular voice, many institutions, one person tells the story. How do you diversify who tells the story of our history? And here at Grounds for Sculpture, we've been trying to complicate who tells the story here, who works with artists, how do exhibitions come together. And so we invited Monument Lab as a co-conspirator and a partner to kind of rethink the way we work here as a museum.
I was really interested in making something that would be able to transform beyond the 18-month run of this show. A temporary monument that is in conversation with labor practices, extractive industries, circularity, and the ability to imagine materials beyond what we see them as. The world that I've been in really has been about remaking of our relationship to these things, the materiality of the world, the following these things all the way back to their origin and place of extraction, and then following it back to where it meets a consumer or an industry, and then seeing what the built environment does in terms of disposing of these things and how that's treated and how we recover value out of that. How to transform that into something that continues to be a generative idea, but how that transforms into something that continues to exist, but maybe not totally in the physical totality of a 42,000-pound sculpture. Part of why I wanted to work in that scale with that material, because of how much you can't really describe these things, and it has to be felt.
I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with what a bottle tree is, but they look like ornamental pieces that are typically much smaller than what we see here on lawns and spaces, primarily in the South. Going back to like an African spiritual practice, the blue bottle itself represents what's called the waterline. And the waterline is the separation between the physical and spiritual realm in the Black syncretic religion of Hoodooism and other lesser known practices and spirituality and the derivative and the diasporic practices of West African culture. The word blue itself reminds me of an overarching state of being. When we think about blue, we think about the blues, we think about food that's related to the blues, we think about Southern food, we think about comfort, but blue in and of itself is, to me, an invisible monument within the Black culture and Black community that describes a particular state of being, feeling, and comfort and protection. Food shows up in almost every single aspect of, and particularly Black American and diasporic practices, as a way to either offer healing or ask for healing. In this garden here, we have several different types of plants and herbs that are reflective of herbalism and food products. There's an altar at the base of the tree where there's a bottle of Hennessy down there, y'all, which is not food, but it is an offering. And so the tree itself and the meals that will come from the experience kind of lend itself to altarism, which is an acknowledgement of our ancestors and a calling and a conversation with that spiritual realm in a healthy way.
All the research that went into this started during COVID, when I was trying to understand where the hate was coming from. And so I did a lot of research into archives and about the history of Chinese immigration to America. Reading about the history of Chinatown, which is new to me. My parents came as students. I just knew a little bit about the Exclusion Act. My childhood was kind of going to the Jersey Shore, eating spaghetti, not eating lo mein and, things like that. Noodle Mountain is a giant pop-up book, a reference to spaghetti and meatballs, but also lo mein, and also all the different things that noodles can conjure politically too. The sign combined with this altar referenced this machine that was created in the 19th century to replace Chinese labor. When Chinese laborers came to America, they were forced to cut their queues off. And that was to kind of humiliate them because they knew that how important the queue was. A queue was representative of their identity. It was part of the law in China to wear that queue. So because of that, I decided to add a queue to the very top of the sculpture.
Wax, I think, holds a lot of potential, a material that can become liquid with just time and a flame. And so I like that sort of fluidity of the material as a metaphor for the ways that we can think about public space or the potentials of public power. Wax, too, traditionally is used in sculpture to make bronze monuments. So traditionally, you'd make a bronze monument through a lost wax process where you make a wax, you make a mold around that wax, you melt out all the wax, and you pour bronze into that negative space. And so I liked, in addition to just all the things that you can do with wax and its cheapness and like its relationship to like candles and vigils and that sort of like religious contemplative space. It was doing that thing too of like reversing the time on these monuments back to a moment when they were malleable and had the potential to be something else. This work is not trying to think about the person on the pedestal as in, like take down that Confederate one and put up this one, but a question of the pedestal itself and sort of this way of memorializing history through the heroicizing one individual in something that always involved a community, that involved a lot of people. And so thinking about the ways that the traditional way of memorializing has dwarfed the community and therefore our power, and opening up space around that to be about the ways in which we can be building these things together.
The name of my public art piece is called Shh. So, Shh is a large-scale installation text-based piece that, as you clearly see, spells out this onomatopoeic term. These letters are 6 feet tall because sea level rise will be rising exactly 6 feet over the next 30 to 50 years. And by doing so, there's an enormity of languages that will be lost in the future. By the end of the century, we will have lost 7,000 languages. We lose a language every 40 days due to climate change. And this is something that people don't really know and understand about climate change. We hear more about infrastructure, about the loss of land. However, to lose a language is losing a culture, it's losing history, and losing a whole livelihood of what's ahead. So much about monumentality is about taking people, events, and things from the past and holding them and cementing them down. For me, making this monument today is so much about what's at stake in the future. And seeing our surroundings and seeing how important our surroundings are, and really being able to ingest it, which goes so much with the title, which is slow motion, right? There's this friction where it's really hard to address catastrophe and death and loss in a way that doesn't feel like it mimics that, but in a way it enlivens the conversation, and it's an active conversation, right?
It was really exciting to see the public engage with the works in ways that we expected, but also in very unexpected ways. What we're hoping is that people also don't forget about joy and about hope. And I saw that today with a lot of the visitors, especially with a lot of the kids that came with their parents and their families. And I'm so excited to see more of that.